Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. I don't know if you've wandered in here, wondering what you found, where this is, but you're now hooked up with the new Cosmic Knowledge Channel. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, your host, and I'm joined today by the lovely and talented, and I mean that literally on both accounts, Sandra D'Angelo. Say hello, Sandra.
Hello, everyone.
Sandra is not only my sweetheart, she is my new partner in this work. And if you think that it's been good so far, just wait, because we're just getting started. And before we do get started, I want to call your attention to Sandra D'Angelo's channel. Sandra, talk a little bit about your channel, if you would, please.
Well, I got a few things going on now. It didn't start off that way originally, but I started the channel in December. And I want to say thank you so much for everybody that's subscribed. I really appreciate it. So I typically, because of my schedule, I'm uploading 1 to 2 videos a week and various subjects on spirituality. A lot of it is direct experience that I'm having, usually in my life in this timeline, or things that I've gone through as of recently that I want to speak about. You know, intention, integrity. I have a series on energy, vibrations, frequency, intention. I have people on my channel for conscious conversations. I think that they're really elevating and enlightening and can help activate people and into higher realms of consciousness, if you will. So a lot of stuff going on. I talk a little bit about meditation. I'm studying the instructional piece of meditation now. So I'm hoping that sooner than later, I'll be able to elaborate on meditation instruction on some of my videos. A lot of different stuff going on over there.
Sandra, if you would, talk a little bit about the absolutely profound video you made regarding our children.
Yeah, so that was really cool because, you know, I have these conversations with Sophia over the last year. I find myself a lot with her, trying to get her to tune into her own intuition. You know, she is my mirror. So a lot of times I'll see in her how I was when I was younger. And if my parents had known better then, I think they would have helped to, at least my mom anyway, she would have helped to enhance my gifts as opposed to suppress them. So I'm very careful with not suppressing Sophia. She's a highly sensitive being. She's deeply aware of herself and her surroundings. And she has, you know, we all come into this realm, I feel, with our first sense being intuition. So, but, you know, that is easily and quickly robbed from us through parents or teachers or guides. And Sophia's intuition is so strong that I want to help her enhance that. I don't want to take that from her. So I was taking her to school the other day. And as I said in my video, you know, she'll say things and she'll look to me for answers about certain things like, oh, mommy, my tummy hurts. So it's the way she states it that she's looking for guidance or she's seeking an answer. And something dawned on me where I was just not wanting to answer her. I wanted to encourage her to answer herself. So I started to teach her this practice about asking herself questions. And I had said to her, you know, you can ask yourself anything and always get an answer. So we've been working on that. And interestingly enough, we did it again this morning and she's bringing it up now. So she'll say, oh, mommy, my tummy hurts. And I say, oh, well, ask yourself the question. And she was so embarrassed this morning. I don't know why, but she's like, okay, mommy, don't look. So I had to cover my eyes and pretend like I'm not hearing her. And she's asking herself, tummy, are you hungry? You know, or tummy, are you full? So it was cute. But yeah, and then another thing that I practice with her is she'll put her shoes on and she'll ask me, mommy, are these on the right foot? And I've always said to her, well, how do they feel? You know, I think these are little tricks that we can do to help. They have no idea. They think it's a game, but it really is encouraging them to listen to their own inner voice. You know, it's like this, Jeff, too, with the table. I think you and I talked about this, and I want to say this because I think it's important. You know, I was brought up, we had to ask to be excused from the table. And you and I had a conversation around this the other day. Here's another practice where, you know, you change your perception or your approach to a situation slightly, and it changes the whole vibrational frequency of it. So with Sophia here in the house, I don't have her asked to be excused from the table. I look at that as me taking her voice away. It's taking me If I were to tell her she needs to be asked to be excused from the table, I'm teaching her to practice giving her power away. At the end of the day, it's like, I don't know what the answer is good for me. I don't know the right answer for myself. So I need to seek outward for that answer. And that might, so I don't know. I don't know if I'm articulating it right, but I think it's a good example of the dinner table. So she gets up when she's ready and I let her.
I think what you're doing, Sandra, is you're teaching her, but more you're teaching her to be empowered and getting her prepared to be divine, to be sovereign, and to be free, to be a full individual.
I hope so. That's my intention. You know, I'm not always on, but it is my intention for sure, and always has been.
When the old saying was, image is everything. That's not true. Intention is everything.
I agree.
And today we're here to talk about walk-ins, Sandra.
We are.
And surprisingly enough, we probably don't have completely synchronous views on walk-ins, and there might be a little disagreement. There might be a little discussion. It might be a little bit like my talks with Uncle Wayne Steiger. Although, folks, let me say right here for public consumption, I've never kissed Wayne Steiger. Not that I wouldn't. He's a handsome man, but I have never kissed Wayne Steiger, and I will confess to having kissed Sandra. So, but at any rate,
Dottie, that's great. Sorry.
So let's talk about this, and let's start with just a little bit of an explanation. And I was a little bit taken aback by the fact that there's not a huge amount of information. Did you see that from Warrior Princess?
I did.
There's not a huge amount of information out there about walk-ins. Seems like there's two types of information. There's information that I would call lore, which deals with, ancient thought and ancient talk about walk-ins, or as you pointed out earlier today, Sandra, warrior or wanderers. Some call them wanderers, some call them walk-ins, but there's not as much information as I expected. And another thing I found very interesting was if you look at the lore, or if you look at the ancient talk about wanderers or the ancient talk about walk-ins, about 60% of it says, be careful, they're not good, watch out. It's about a 60-40 split in the lore. If we go to the modern literature, the modern New Age literature, it's almost 100% that walk-ins are great, fun, enjoyable, happy. It's a super duper good thing. So my question, and what I like to ponder with you today, and we welcome the audience to bring in their questions and thoughts as well. Sandra, are walk-ins, as you have seemed to speak to me about in the past, are they potentially upgrades, or is it more like what I tend to think, that they're a deal with the devil, or is the truth somewhere in between?
Well, I can speak from my experience. I was shocked that you had even considered the idea of walk-ins, I have to say. So that conversation was interesting. And I can only speak from my experience. So here's what I thought about walk-ins. I didn't know what they were until probably, I don't know, let's say maybe early 2016, the term came across my radar.
Sandra, let me stop you just for 1 second, because someone is still, I didn't give a great explanation. Basically what a walk-in is where a person that's in a body, the soul, the spirit that's in a body will, depending on who you talk to, either of its own will say, okay, I'm done with this body, I'm leaving this body, or sometimes even I'm willing to share this body, and another spiritual entity will walk in or take up residence in the body. It's supposedly, depending upon whether you read the lore or the literature, a mutual decision, a negotiated decision. It's if you were reading literature lore, it's not a possession, depending upon who you talk to. So it's an exchange. I'm done with this body. It's like you're sitting at the beach, and there's a whole bunch of people at the beach, like we were the other day, Sandra. The place was packed, and they've got all these great beach chairs, and here's somebody sitting in this beach chair, and they paid for it for the whole day, and they had this body for the whole lifetime. but they decided they're leaving early so somebody else could come sit in that beach chair that's already been paid for, that was already supposed to be somebody else's. Very crude analogy, but basically that's what a walk-in is. It's supposedly negotiated. It's supposedly understood by both parties. Most times, I think the resident entity will leave the body, but sometimes they've been known to even quote unquote share, which makes my hair stand on end.
Well, I never heard the fact that they used to share. So here's the thing. Wow, that was greatly explained. That's very
second time around, I got it.
And that's exactly how I've always understood them. So when it first came across my radar in 2016, let me backtrack. So I had an experience in 2014, which some people know, some people don't. It was very profound.
Scotty Roberts in the house.
Hi, Scotty. And so the bits and pieces of this profound experience that have to do with walk-ins, I'll share. So prior to the actual big bang of the moment, I remember having a conversation with my best friend at the time and telling her, I feel so old. I feel ancient. I feel like I have lived 1,000 lives.
A special welcome to Travis Thorpe in the chat room. I'm sorry.
That's okay, babe. So I had that conversation with her. It was very short-lived, but I remember just feeling really worn and ancient, and I was worn out. So I was going through a lot of emotional trauma, and which caused mental trauma and physical trauma and all of that. And when my profound experience, the night of my profound experience began, looking back after walk-ins and the definition of walk-ins and just the whole idea of walk-ins came into my reality, I then started to reflect back 2 years prior to that profound experience and started asking myself questions. So I'm one of those people that I don't believe in accidents. I think everything happens for a reason. And I think there was a reason that out of nowhere, walk-ins came into my reality, or the idea of them. So it brought me back to 2014, and I started thinking about that night that I woke up in the middle of the living room floor, and I had a sense of all these tyrant-like spirits around me, and that I was almost outside of my body. I remember getting up off the floor. It was a strange feeling, like I was in my body, but I was outside of it simultaneously. It's strange. Like I was definitely off the living room floor, walking around the condo. My daughter was sleeping, but I'm watching myself do all of this at the same time. So, I started to relate walk-ins to that particular time in my life. There was a lot of galactic experiences at that point. I had a lot of experiences simultaneously with demonic beings, with ghosts, like apparition figures. So I started to wonder what had happened to me, because I received a lot of profound, wise information in a short amount of time. And for some reason, I was able to embody that information, acclimate it into my reality. It didn't happen overnight, but I started to reflect on the journey from 2014 until to 2016. And
Sandra, were you receiving this information from beings or entities, or in more of a download type form?
I was hands-on with it. I was reading a lot. I was one door would open another. I'd find this article. I'd read about this, the return of Sophia, and then it would lead to that. And I found John Lamb Lash. So you know how that goes. Once
right.
You open Pandora's box, forget it. So I was physically proactive in the research and consuming the information, but the integration of all of that information happened really fast. And that's where I feel there may have been some sort of assistance. And, I also, as you know, Jeff, I was being telepathically communicated with at that time throughout those 4 or 5 months. They weren't feeding me bits of wisdom. They were so to speak. It was more about, okay, we're taking your daughter to another place to school her school her in our ways. So, that's another Oprah show.
That is. And Travis, who is a advanced Triskelion priest. I believe it's called Triskelion Wicca. Forgive me if I'm wrong, Travis, but he's an advanced priest. And he says, magically speaking, the term that we're referring to is called a drawdown. And depending upon whether or not you choose or not to have this, like we talked about before, this arrangement, if you choose to have the arrangement, if it's negotiated, it would be a drawdown. If you were infringed upon, it would be called a possession. Travis says that it is either by consent, which i.e. would be a drawdown, or it is by force, which would be a possession. Please continue on, Sandra. Fascinating.
Well, I find it's interesting because your definition of walk-in made me, even now, just now live on this show, I had already entered a state of surrender before I even knew what that was. You know, when I was complaining about how ancient that I felt, and you know, I'd lived 1,000 lives. You know, so that's what sparked my idea of wanting to speak about that piece of it. So I was entering a state of surrender before I even realized it. So now we're back at 2016. I'm learning about walk-ins, or, you know, very little, but nonetheless, they crossed my radar. And I started to question that time period again. And then I had another profound experience a few months later, April 2016, where I was on my way to handle some business matters that were heavy in nature, emotionally and mentally. And I had my very first, what I would describe as outer body experience, where I was literally in a state of bliss, where I was watching myself driving down the highway. And I understood at that moment that I was in the seat of myself. And they talk about that in meditation, you know, where you get past the me and the I and the yous, and you just are you find the true essence of who you really are, which I also refer to as the higher self. And I am convinced at that moment that my higher self took the driver's seat. And collectively, looking back on my timeline, I think that's what happened. I think 2014 was the start of my higher self taking the front seat, taking the driver's seat, and the full integration of that was April 2016.
So it almost sounds like you're saying that your higher self walked in to your worn out, tired self.
I believe that. Yep.
Do you believe it was just a disembodied aspect of your higher self? Do you believe it was a Sandra from another dimension? Do you think you're convinced it was you?
I think I would own the words that it was definitely a higher aspect of me, at least that, at the very least. But that, to me, Jeff, is what a higher self is. Our higher self is the higher aspect of who we truly are, the best version of us.
Absolutely. And Travis says that in Triskelion Wicca, this would be called the magical personality.
I indefinitely feel that.
Interesting.
It's almost a knowing. And I don't think I would have known it unless April 2016 came around and I had that profound experience driving. That was extremely blissful. There's no words that could describe that. Everything was pure bliss. And it's mostly, I look at the self-transformation that I've been able to make in such a short amount of time. I mean, 3 years ago, people wouldn't even have recognized me. I was 130 pounds. I was drinking heavily, relying on my prescription medications. I hated the world. I hated people. I was just a suppressed person, you know? I mean, I was negative about everything. And I look at myself today and I think I had some divine intervention along the way that helped me get here.
Well, Travis is weighing in again, and he says that, you know, I'm extrapolating a little bit, but I think he's saying that when you first started to have your profound experience, you started to seek the best version of yourself. And as you started and we're going through this process, you decided to surrender to the best version of yourself. And that best version of yourself walked in, was drawn down, you surrendered to it, and you underwent a profound personal evolution.
Absolutely. That could not have been put more perfectly. That's how I feel. And then you add the Lord
Well,
Shiva.
thank you. Thank you very much.
You add the Lord Shiva piece to it. That is exactly what I'm trying to say. That's exactly how I feel what happened to me. My ego got demolished. The ego part of Sandra, the I, the me part of me, of Sandra. I mean, that old, it was a rebirth. It was a rebirth. So, I mean, for me, I don't know if that's necessarily a walk-in, but that's how I always understood a walk-in after, based on my personal experience. And thought,
go ahead, please.
No, I just thought, okay, then if that's my analogy of a walk-in, then I guess I am one. But your analogy of a walk-in, I certainly don't. I agree to that. Like, I don't feel that that's what happened to me. I don't feel like a different entity took over. I just think the best part of me took over, the lesser part of me.
Well, let's talk about, and let's look a little bit more at your experience in terms of looking at the lore and looking at the literature. So if we were to try to objectively explain your experience based on the lore and based on the literature, we could say that with those profound experiences of 2016, you might have begun the negotiation process of, look, I'm screwing this up. I'm messing this up. I'm sick and tired of being tired, and I need some help. And over that period of time of months, that there was this negotiation going forth, and maybe that aspect of Sandra that was in your body at that time was just worn out, fed up, knew she couldn't do it. And is it possible that she said, okay, I'll leave, and you, the higher, better, stronger, faster, bionic woman, drawdown, what did he call it? Magical personality, took up residence within your soul here on earth?
Well, I mean, that sounds to be true based on who I am today, because I am not nowhere near the person I used to be. That person is dead.
Do you have any sense that you are currently sharing that soul form with that old self?
No, none at all. That's what I mean by I understood that fully, that was the process. April 2016, that from May 2014 till April 2016, that was what I was actually really going through. The death of the ego, the death of that lesser Sandra, and a true rebirth.
Sandra, would you extrapolate and say that each one of us has to have this experience in our life at some point?
I think it relates to what's that? The dark night of the soul. That's what I think this experience relates to. And I don't know if I'd use the word has to have. I think it is probably an intimate decision. And I also feel it's encoded in our DNA. I think, I spoke to Heidi about this when she did my reading, and she said that profound experience was in my birth charts, that something profound was it destined to happen. It was pre-planned to happen to me at that time. So I think a lot of different aspects need to be considered. I think there's something that we can't really truly understand, but it seems present in all profound experiences, that it is an intimate decision between the me of us and the higher self. And when it's that person's time on their journey, that's when it will happen. I don't believe in accidents. Sometimes this lifetime might not be the lifetime for some of us here on the planet to evolve. It's just not their time. That's not what they chose for themselves. There may be some people are still here to learn lessons around greed or control or, or lust or whatever.
Sounds like the payment of karmic debt.
Yeah.
And remember, folks, karma's only a bitch if you are.
That's right. That's right.
Travis says that every ancient and proper mystery school, and I would add in both past and present, has always required a death of the old self and a rebirth into a new you. And even if you think about, get out of your Christian mindset, get out of your Sunday school mindset, didn't the master, the Christ, Jesus, Yeshua, whatever you call him, didn't he say something about a man having to be born again if he wants to see, or a woman being born again if she wants to see the kingdom of God or the kingdom of the heavens? So it sounds, whatever you define it as, Sandra, however you explain it, Sandra, you did have a complete magical, with a K, if you would, death, and a complete spiritual rebirth.
I absolutely did. You know, I think in some cultures, they even call it a Kundalini awakening, you know, or spiritual awakening, for sure. That's exactly what I went through.
Interesting. So if what happened to you was a walk-in, would it be fair to say that you would consider it a profoundly positive experience?
Yes.
Would you consider it a profoundly transformational experience?
Yes. And those are big ifs, you know, but yes, absolutely.
Would you say that it was an experience that irretrievably changed your life for the better? And if it had not happened, the soul form that is sitting here before us as Sandra might not even be here today.
Absolutely. Yep.
Think of the repercussions of that. If you're not here, then Sophia's not here. And think of I've met this little girl. There's some profound things going to come from her. We would have never met. The stuff that is being produced through us and by us would have never happened. And wow, it's just amazing. So from the Sandra D'Angelo point of view, walk-ins are profound. Walk-ins are helpful. Walk-ins are a good thing. But let's keep in mind, we have to say that you had a drawdown, magically speaking. You had a negotiated, understood, I'm ancient, I'm tired, I want to leave.
Yep.
And I wonder, how about this? I wonder if, and I wonder what Travis might say about this, and maybe we can get Travis on next week for part 2 of this. I wonder if a true drawdown or a true walk-in in a negotiated, proper context is always an aspect of your higher self.
That's a great question. You know, here's why I know that it was still part of me, because the way they explain, and you can get more into this, I'm sure, because you've researched it. They explain walk-ins or wanderers as, I don't want to lose my train of thought. I'm going to lose it. I lost my train of thought.
That's
Sorry.
okay. That's okay. If it comes back to you, interrupt me. Okay.
Okay.
So Sandra we've heard she was tired. She was worn out. She said, you know, I'm out of here. I'm screwing this up. I'm not going to make it right. I'm filling in gaps that she didn't say because I know the story. And a higher aspect of herself. Travis, go ahead. Hit me.
All right. So wanderers and walk-ins are described to us as not being able to remember certain things, like in their childhood, or even people that are in their life right now. So if a walk-in comes in and so I'm in a relationship with you, I remember you, I know you. If a walk-in were to come in, there would be a lot of sense of unfamiliarity with you.
Let's not let that happen.
No, but that never was the case for me. I always remembered my family. I never felt strange around them after this experience. I never felt strange around, like, where I couldn't remember certain things. So that's why I know, for me, it was not an entity outside of myself taking over. It was a higher aspect of me.
Sandra, think of some of the things that we've been talking about the last couple days. And Travis says, it's not always an aspect of your higher self. He says a true and proper drawdown is with the divine. And let me extrapolate. It's like an Elohim comes and takes residence in you.
Huh.
A divinity comes and takes residence in you. We've talked a lot about that. And do you have anything that you want to add to your experience before I go to the dark side over here?
No, I definitely want, no, I'm good. Go for it.
Let me explain my walk-in experience to you, if you will. Sandra went from a place where she felt like she was tired, done, ready to give up, and a better person came in, right?
Yes.
My experience was that, and boy, the chat is just blazing by. I can no longer keep up with it. I'm sorry. But my experience was that, I was born a very young child. I was a pretty cool guy. I had a happy childhood. I think I was a normal kid, but something happened along the way, and that my parents were divorced, and there was a lot of that stuff. But the old Jeff that I remember was a person that was very jealous, a person that was very suspicious, a person that was convinced that everybody was out to get him, everybody was cheating on him. I was a guy that was almost impossible to have any type of a relationship with. I was a guy romantically. I was a guy that had to be the smartest guy in the room. I was a guy that was constantly in competition with everybody else. And of course, that fed right into me being a Pentecostal evangelist, because all those things I just described are perfect qualifications for a Pentecostal evangelist. And it was about 1999. I too had a lying on the living room floor experience. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I was an evangelist. I had a worship team that included a song leader, a piano player, some other people. And my wife decided, my ex-wife now, of course, but my wife at that time decided that she didn't want to be married to me anymore. And that basically my wife ran off with one of my musicians while he was playing the piano for me. She was handling his organ, is kind of the bottom line. But anyway, that sent me obviously into a big spiral. I found myself in Hawaii. At least I was in a great place. And I'm lying in the middle of this condo floor, Heineken beer bottles, cigar, burnt out cigars all around me, literally lying in the fetal position, crying my eyes out. I thought that life was over. I really did. And I got to the point and I just said, listen, to divinity, if you want to kill me, but I still have the belief that even if you kill me, you're still real. And I know I've just messed this thing up so badly. And it seemed like at that point, and it took, that was maybe my April of 2014 or whatever, the beginning of my profound experience. That was about 1999, 2000. It took me probably until 2000, and this is 2018, probably 2011. 2011, I was in a relationship, and it just hit me. All of the oppressive and suppressive traits that I was experiencing, doing all these things that were controlling and manifesting jealousy, and realizing that it really wasn't about the people I was having the relationship with. It was deep within me. Mm-hmm. I didn't trust me. I didn't feel right about me. So long story short, or at least relatively short, I feel like, and I had a profound change. I mean, it just was boom, overnight, profound change. And I can't help thinking that I kicked out a walk-in. That horrible, sniveling wreck of a person wasn't me. That controller, and think about what I was doing for a living as well. Preaching the fear and guilt control matrix, preaching blood sacrifice, preaching dead guy Jesus on a stick, preaching turn or burn, heaven or hell. It was all about manifesting my power. It was all about exerting my will over other people. Mm-hmm. And when I realized that, boom, sorry about that. It was as if there was like you driving in your car. It was just an instant transformation. And I've never been the same from that point to this. And it sounds like, to me, I think of it in terms of, I had a negative walk-in that was taking up residence. Maybe he was pushing me down or holding me down, but I feel like I kicked him out. How does that strike you?
Well, to be honest with you, it sounds like we're saying the same thing in a different way, because everything you just described about that first person that was running the show for a while was your ego self. So, and that is what needs to die for the true essence of who we are to be born. We all have that true essence within us, yet we all have that negative ego. Well, I shouldn't say it's always, the ego should be utilized as a tool for the higher self, for the spirit.
I
so
agree.
I shouldn't say it's negative, but we all have a dark side that is usually and almost always run by the ego. And I think part of our spiritual evolution, one of the biggest lessons, is to abolish that and to learn to utilize the ego in the proper, correct manner as a tool for the higher self. So when you explain that story to me, every time you tell me that story, I hear the same thing that I'm trying to say, just articulated in a different way. I think that was the ego Jeff, the me Jeff, the all about me, self-will instead of divine will, and that needed to die out. It just, yours happened it sounds like it happened a little bit more instantaneously than mine.
Nigel says he either kicked a walk-in out or let one in. He's not sure yet which.
Oh boy.
If Heidi were here, she would say that was the old Jeff from Mars that was oppressing Rex Bear.
Right. So, but nonetheless, it was still an aspect of you. We all have dark aspects. We all have light aspects, so it was still an aspect of you. It just wasn't the true essence of who you are.
Excellent.
So that's where our disagreement is, I think, because I don't hear your story the way that you feel it. I hear it, I'd like to think from an objective point of view. That's what I'm here. But I also, who knows? I don't know. I'd love to hear what the people in the chat room say.
So you're saying that we are telling the same story?
I think so, in just a different way. Is that what you guys are hearing? I want some feedback.
And Sandra, let me get into our business a little bit in front of all these people. You said to me maybe a week or two ago, I can't remember where we were, but you said something to me. And if you remember what this was, tell me exactly what you said. You said something to me about, I see you as an Elohim or an Elohim. What did you say?
Oh, well, I see your energy. See, when I meet people, I see their energy before I see them, like their face or.
And we met many months ago, by the way.
Yeah. I've been subscribed to your channel for a long time, for over a year now, so the more I got to know you, the more it was obvious to me that you hold energies of like a warrior. You have warrior energy, you have gladiator energy, and I feel you were a part of the Elohim, that you have that. You don't just have that energy. So it's different. I can sense in you that you have warrior-like energy. So you were a warrior at one point, in this lovely spiral of existence. And you also were a gladiator at one point, almost like those men in the movie 300.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to the Elohim, I see you as an Elohim. So like you have a lot stronger ties to the Elohim. It wasn't just, I don't know, I just see you as an Elohim, or that you came from the Elohim.
And if you bring in the information that the Triskelion priest Travis Thorpe has brought to us, that it's very possible that I could have had a drawdown from the Elohim, a drawdown from deity. That's what the high priest says is the way that it works. So
and run through drawdown again. So elaborate on that.
A drawdown is the magical, with a K, equivalent of a walk-in. The mundane, the non-magical, just the the kind of silly unicorn rainbow, conspiracy theory. Jeff is about to melt and live there forever.
Yes. Okay.
I think he's talking about you, young lady. But anyway, that in magical perspective, that's called a drawdown.
Okay.
And a drawdown, as Travis said, either always comes from deity or from a higher aspect of yourself. So I had a drawdown from the Elohim or of an Elohim.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just what I see. I've been able to do that since I was little. I didn't know it then, but I know it now about reading people's energy. So I feel like that's almost absolute with you, that you just have come from that group.
That explains a lot, Sandra. And Scotty Roberts, who is very, Travis says a drawdown is the willingful possession of the divine. We say, oh man, it's like the master, the Christ says, it's not me that lives anymore, but it's the master that lives within me. It's us saying, you know what? I'm setting aside my ego.
Mm-hmm.
I'm setting aside my will. I'm surrendering to divinity. I'm setting aside all the wills and the desires and the hungers and the lust of this soul form. And I'm submitting to my higher self, which is an aspect of the divine. And I'm drawing in the essence of the Elohim into this soul form. So in a way, we all are, get in trouble for this, manifestations of the Christ, or manifestations. We are all God's walking around on earth in human flesh. Scotty Roberts, who's a very good friend of Travis Thorpe, we've all three hung out. Scotty says, and listen to this, folks, he has personally experienced Travis drawing down deity up close and personal. If he wasn't tuned in, Scotty says he would have been a bit terrified, and not much scares Scotty Roberts.
Yeah, I saw that. Nigel, it is hard, but it's possible.
Wow.
He says setting aside ego is hard.
Wow.
You know, Travis states things, articulates himself very well. I mean, he's pulling the thoughts from my mind for sure. I couldn't have said it any better myself. That's exactly how I feel about my experience. And that's how I feel about your experience too.
So are walk-ins, are drawdowns an upgrade?
I think so.
I think we can say that a true, if we're going to talk in mundane terms, which I don't like to do, a negotiated walk-in would almost inevitably be, and there's a caveat coming, an upgrade. A magical drawdown is always going to be an upgrade. It's always going to be beneficial in spiritual and magical terms. But I think that this presupposes a very high level of spiritual interest, spiritual purity. I think it presupposes a high degree of pure spiritual essence from the person that experiences it. Because if you go into it where you're not really spiritual and you're not really doing it out of pure motives, you probably could have a possession instead of a walk-in.
I think so. Yep.
Travis, weigh in on that.
You know, and think about it, and Jeff, with the whole Shiva piece, right? Lord Shiva and that conference, that would tie into the walk-in. Like, are you serious? What are your intentions here? It would ties into the whole negotiation piece of it subconsciously that I may have been going through. And just that whole life review conference, like, and remember I said to you, and I've said many times, on the Leak Project with the latest story that I told, the last thing that Lord Shiva said to me was, you're on evaluation for the fifth dimension. I mean, if you take that silly statement and put it with my process from 2014 to 2016, when I know that my higher self took the driver's seat, the ego was done. It is now only being used as a tool for the higher self. It's interesting when you think about that phrase, and then you think, so I don't know, it all is connected,
Wow, this is strong from Travis. He says the answer is simple. For a priest or someone like us that's seeking to do work in service, he says, you just become a meat puppet and a tool for the divine. I don't really like his analogy, but you don't matter anymore. You work in service to something greater than yourself. It's interesting that you mentioned that, Sandra, because I don't know if you remember. You probably do, and I think it's still on my mirror. You were sitting underneath my mirror the other day, and I took out a, one of these dry erase markers. That one's not. That's a Sharpie. I'm glad I didn't write with this. But for some reason, I just wrote on the mirror, I wrote Sandra's initials, SDA. And I looked at it and I said SDA. And then I wrote an S looks like a 5. I wrote 5DA, which I interpreted to mean fifth dimension angel. And now you, because your last name means angel.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me that Shiva said that you're on evaluation for the fifth dimension.
I think I passed that evaluation.
So you are SDA. Look, stay with me, folks. SDA, turn that S into a 5. Maybe you should change the name of your channel. 5DA. You are right now, Sandra, a fifth dimensional angel.
I thank you.
And if something should ever occur in your life where and I wrote this down, where your initials became SDD, that could be 5DD, which would mean fifth dimensional deity. So maybe another drawdown is in your future.
Maybe.
Interesting
stuff. And when you draw down, you level up. So
when you draw down, you level up. Travis says the meat puppet army. Wow, this is crazy stuff right here. This is crazy stuff.
Interesting.
So would you say, knowing what we know now, did you have a drawdown from Lord Shiva?
Maybe. It's, the way Travis describes drawdown versus walk-in, that truly resonates with me. That is what I've been trying to express. But let me ask you this. Where does the term drawdown come from? How far back does it go? And could it be like what you were speaking about in your video, tongue versus light language? Is walk-in just the new age term for drawdown?
It is, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
All right, so then
walk-in is the bastardization of drawdown.
Well, I'm telling you, I know without any doubt, with absolute certainty that I had a drawdown.
Wow. I'm just trying to see if this is Travis texting me. It's not. So, without a shadow of a doubt, you had a magical drawdown from divinity, possibly Lord Shiva.
Yes. And I've always said that time period, I've always said that if I ever wrote a book about that, I'd call it divine intervention.
You will write a book about that.
Because I understood that even though it seemed so dark and scary, that there was something bigger working in my favor.
Yeah, that's a prophecy. You will write a book about that.
Yeah.
And so you would say objectively of me that, in your opinion, I had a drawdown as well from the Elohim.
I think so.
Wow.
I think so. And maybe we have to face one of those divine deities, if you will, when we go through that process. Maybe that's part of the process. I don't know. I'd love to see if more people can weigh in on this, if they've experienced that, to see if that's part of their experience, if there's some sort of common thread with magical drawdowns or, walk-ins.
Travis, did you have a drawdown? Scotty Roberts, do you believe that you've had a drawdown? I would love to do a survey of people that are making a difference in the world and see if they have all had drawdowns. Nigel, Shiva is the god of destruction of the ego, but Shiva is also the god of creation.
That's right. Well, Shiva destroys the ego while creating. So it's almost like a I wouldn't say simultaneous.
D'Angelo.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened to you. The destruction of the ego, the simultaneous recreation and indwelling of the divine.
It's exactly what happened to me. That's why I think Lord Shiva was present in that time period at the very end. After I met with Lord Shiva, things transformed.
Scotty Roberts says it's not within his cognitive memory, but I know Scotty, and he's saying, you know what? Some of my definitive moments in life, I think they might have been drawdowns.
Yes.
Travis said that he has drawdown in almost every ritual but he's also gone through 3 spiritual evolutions and magical personalities.
I think that, yeah, I think, you know, so.
And I'm about to go into another, I shared this with you before the show. I'm about to level up. I
was just going to say that.
Of going up to another level.
Well, babe, you know that, yeah, we've talked. I mean, we both are, but for sure. I was just going to say that I think that, I mean, when it gets better, it gets better, you know?
Right.
You know, when you feel good, and you feel it just gets better and better.
Wow. Wow. And I am Frog in a Box. That's a great name. And I've said this many times on Leak Project with Wayne. You know, Wayne and Rex correctly identify all, the 5G and all of the bad electronic stuff they're attacking us with. And I've said, and I know they kind of look at me strange sometimes because, I'm kind of like the unicorn and rainbow guy of this realm, because I say, yeah, they are trying to attack us with all that, but I'm happy about it. I'm excited about it because it means they realize that this battle is actually a spiritual, energetic battle, and they realize that we've got the real energetic guns and weaponry, and they are frantically struggling to come up with some type of a energetic weapon that can stop the Travis Thorpes of the world, the Sandra D'Angelos of the world, the Scotty Roberts of the world, the Jeffrey Dartys of the world, the GTA Gospel Truth Armies of the world.
Babe, think about it. So of course they are, and they're not just doing it in this realm; they're doing it in the astral realm also, because this is a common thread for many people that go through a spiritual awakening, and it certainly was the case for me. When you go through the dark night of the soul or a spiritual awakening, you are almost always bombarded with demonic beings. And I don't think that's on accident. I think it's part of the plan.
Travis, we got to do some work together. You and Scotty and us. Keep going, babe. I'm sorry.
No, I think they're working this realm and they're working the spiritual realm, just like good spirits and good intended people like you and I, and all these people in the chat room are working this realm, and our higher aspects are working that realm. We have to assume that whatever we're doing, the other side is doing also. So I think that it's going to be it's going to serve people if and when they do go through the dark night of the soul, to hold that awareness that is part of the process to see the darker side, and that's going to intensify. I mean, for me, it was very intense. I understand now that it's because I'm such a powerful person that needed to be intense and extreme, because I am intense and extreme. So it balanced out the scales. I was terrified through that time, but I made it through, and I can see that's clearly now.
Ladies and gentlemen, she's 5'3", 110 pounds, but let me assure you, that is one tough chica sitting there looking at you. That is a spiritual powerhouse. That is, with all apologies to Warrior Princess, a warrior princess. Mark Center Saint says an imitation is the highest form of flattery, and they're trying their best to come up with something to take us out, but it's not going to work. We are going to win. We are going to rise above it. But Sandra D'Angelo had to go to the dark night of her soul. Sandra D'Angelo had to go to the shadow work. Sandra D'Angelo had to be willing to lie on the floor in a puddle of her own tears. She had to be willing to do the massive meditative work that she's doing right now. I had to be willing to lay in the fetal position. I had to be willing to lay down everything. And then the part I left out about that was 1999, took control of my life, making nearly $400,000 a year, rolling. I mean, it was big time stuff. But then I still realized this isn't where it's at. So I went through another transition of giving that up and coming to the place where I am now. But I would not go back to where I was for all those zeros on those paychecks. And if you want to get to where Travis Thorpe has arrived, if you want to get to where Scotty Roberts has arrived, if you want to get to where Rex Bear has arrived, and Wayne Steiger and Heidi Vandenberg and Sandra D'Angelo, remember the old saying, be careful what you wish for? Because if you want to get to where these, and I'm just going to say it, spiritual giants, Jay Campbell, throw him in the mix, have gone, you better get ready for some dark night of the soul. And like Nigel just said, you can't ever go back. Once you're in, you're in.
But you don't want to either, so.
You don't. So
it's very true. It's very
I used to say when I was a preacher, salvation is free, but it ain't cheap. Forget salvation. You don't need salvation. But this way of true spirituality, it is free, but it ain't cheap.
It's not cheap. It's a lifestyle change, you know?
Yep. Spiritual warfare, baby, says Travis Thorpe, 11 Baker.
Yep.
Wow.
Good
what else
stuff.
do you say to that?
Good stuff.
What else do you say to that?
Get to work.
And like I said, we are the last generation of real humans. Let's get busy. And I've never been, I'll just be frank with you. I'll share a little insight into my life right now. I'm going through a lot of crap. I got a lot of attack and a lot of flack coming my way. But I remember when I was in the Air Force, you don't start hitting flak unless you're over the target. Flag, they don't start shooting at you unless you're over the target. So I know I'm over the target. I know I'm over the target. And Travis reminds me correctly that it ain't free. There's just a different price to pay. That's right. Nothing's free. Right. Nothing's cheap. Nothing's easy. At least nothing worth having. I know that's bad English, but it's a good point. Sandra, tell us what is going through your mind. Tell us what you want to wrap this up with.
Good conversation. I love it. Yeah. Thanks everybody in the chat for subscribing to my channel and for all your great feedback. You know, it's I am nothing without you. So I'm really humbled and I'm grateful. Thanks.
And I have to speak to you folks face to face. Sandra's birthday is May 27th. She's got about 711 subscribers right now. You promised me, you people promised me, you said we will get her to 1,000 subscribers by her birthday.
I got 2 birthdays coming up.
You do. You promised me. And I'm going to sweeten the pot for anyone that is not currently a subscriber of the Sandra D'Angelo channel. If you go and subscribe to that channel, I will give you a free ebook, any one of your choice, from my collection. GTA is the Gospel Truth Army. And Sandra will know if you really subscribed or not. So be honest, subscribe, get your friend, or you can get a friend to subscribe, and I'll still send you a free book. Wow. Thank you very much to Travis, who was really a guest on the show without being a guest on the show. Thanks to Scotty Roberts. Thanks to everybody.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Nigel says he subscribed to you at 120, Sandra.
So you were 121, yeah.
Nigel, I think you probably subscribed to me when I had less than 1,000, maybe.
Yeah.
Wow. This is deep stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we don't do this alone. That's for sure. I've watched this unfold and evolve, and it's just a beautiful thing. You know, you talk all the time about Rex being the one that put you in touch with this person or that person, and you've been that person for me. You know, I subscribed to your channel over a year ago, and then things really started to take off in the early fall. And then I found Heidi through you, Jenny, Wayne, Rex, Warrior Princess, all of these people. And then, you know, I start my channel and inspire Warrior Princess, and she's starting her channel. I mean, it's a beautiful thing what's happening. It really is great. It shows the divine interconnectedness of humanity. That's what I see in that. And I just love that.
Melissa says she subscribed to my channel when I had 793 subscribers. Very interesting. So yeah, Scotty says, little did she know, ... And Scotty, let's hope she doesn't find out anything she doesn't like. But ladies and gentlemen, it's a synergy, and synergy means that the sum of the parts is great. The energy produced by the parts is greater than the number of the parts. Us coming together makes us exponentially stronger. So that was some really good stuff, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to bring this to a close. Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Scotty. Thank you, everybody else in the chat room. And again, free book if you subscribe to Sandra D'Angelo's channel. You know what we're going to talk about next week yet?
I don't, but I'm sure we'll come up with something.
I'm sure we'll come up with something.
Challenging.
Please stay right there for a minute, gorgeous. I'd like to say goodbye to you personally. To the rest of you, you are the Gospel Truth Army. I am Jeffrey Daugherty. I salute you. Sandra, I salute you. Thank you for your great work, and we look forward to watching you grow and expand, and we look forward to you helping us grow and expand. For Sandra D'Angelo, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. This is Serpent and Dove, and we will see y'all next week.
Bye.